Left wing politicians and personalities tend to love to act like if you're against regulations, you must be either stupid, corrupt, or masochistic kiss ass that just loves being trampled by big businesses. What they'll never tell you is large corporations love regulations. Just look at Google and Facebook, quite literally asking to be regulated. Or look at how the biggest digital companies lobby for net neutrality, a topic that deserves its own video at some point in the future. The fact is, regulations, especially entry level regulations, are great for large corporations and hideous for small businesses, which makes them terrible for the economy overall. And here's why. Regulations don't work alone. They compare that with inspections, since there would be no point in stipulating regulations if they can't be checked or enforced. Thing is, though, inspections are not an easy thing to deal with. First, there's the bureaucracy. Anyone who's ever had to do anything government related, such as get a permit, participate in a lawsuit, or even do something as simple as getting your passport, can tell you bureaucracies are no fun. They're not there to help you, and they make no effort pretending otherwise. They move at their own awfully sluggish pace, and since they don't depend on customer satisfaction to continue to exist, unlike private businesses, they will almost certainly make sure you understand they will move a muscle to accommodate you at all. So, when you're subject to inspections, especially the initial inspection required to get a business license, or one required to expand your business, you just have to hope they don't decide to schedule it for a month from the date you apply for one. All the time you're forced to wait without opening your business in fear of risking a hefty fine has a cost, called opportunity cost. Here's the thing though, you know who doesn't really need to worry about this type of thing? Big businesses. They have enough political power to ensure the inspection will happen within a reasonable period of time. And if they don't get it the first time, a couple of calls from an executive will almost certainly fix the problem. Another quite common problem with inspections is corruption. Inspectors know that they have the power to cost you enormous amounts of money, and many of them make sure you won't forget that. Briberies are not uncommon. Again, though, big businesses, unlike small ones, have enough political power to almost guarantee they will be treated fairly. And even in the off chance they aren't, they won't feel nearly as big an impact due to my next point. Big businesses may vary a lot, but they have one thing in common. They have tons of assets and the capacity to get even more through bank loans. All their money can be used in many different ways, both legitimate and not so legitimate. One way they can use their vast funds to help them become even larger is they can hire lobbyists to craft the regulations in a way that will benefit them and disrupt their competitors. This is part of why, like I mentioned, large corporations love lobbying for regulations. When Google, Facebook, Yahoo, and other tech giants use their almost unlimited money and influence to convince you and congressmen to take a position in favor of net neutrality, they don't do it because they want a better world or to be in compliance with Google's former motto, don't be evil. They do it because they have something to gain. In this case, it would be that network providers wanted to charge their customers more or less based on how much data or bandwidth they required. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? Well, as you can imagine, Google, Facebook, and friends didn't really feel like paying a much larger bill, so they decided to use propaganda to try and convince people that net neutrality is a good thing. If it had passed, not only would they not have to pay as much, but as a direct consequence of that, all the other customers of the network provider would have to pay for part of the services that these tech giants consume. Add that to the fact that network bills are much more expensive for small businesses in comparison to their revenue, and you can see just how unfair this really would be. That's the kind of thing you can do when you have this type of economic power. You can use it to influence Congress to pass regulations that would be beneficial to your company and increase their market share as a consequence. Not only that, but even in the cases where they push regulations that would force them to spend money they wouldn't have to spend if the regulations didn't exist, they still come out ahead. Walmart can afford to invest whatever is required to open up a new store in compliance to the regulatory demands. How many small business owners, or people who intend to become small business owners, can do the same? And that brings me to our third and final point. When you take the previous points into account, you can't escape the fact that regulations, in particular as mentioned, entry level regulations, are terrible for the economy. Let me propose two scenarios to you. The first one is a world where there are no entry level regulations. In that world, let's imagine a woman who wants to become her own boss and be a hairdresser in her small town. She decides to run the small business out of her garage in her own house. She buys a chair she feels is adequate for the job, puts up a mirror, buys a few tools and hair products she will need, maybe a sign to put up on her lawn to promote her new business, and gets to work. She invests maybe $5,000 or $10,000, money that she's able to save. Or maybe she takes out a small loan, which almost everyone out there would be able to do. After a little while, people like her work, and she keeps getting new customers. She's now able to move out to a different location. She rents, or maybe even buys, a location, buys the required tools and hair products, renovates the place, and hires a few employees. One to pick up the phone and work the schedule, a cleaning lady, and a few hairdressers. Now she employs a few people who have some money to spend, getting the local economy going. Just like her, other people have the same idea and open up their own salons. Soon, these employers will start competing for the best workers, and the best hairdressers will get many job offers. They start to make more money, and again, the local economy benefits from that. The other hairdressers have plenty of incentives to work on their craft, so they too will start making more money. All these new employees have now more disposable income, and they spend money in other small businesses. Unemployment drops, and the small town now has a vibrant middle class. Some of these employees decide to start their own small businesses, and the cycle perpetuates itself. Everyone is doing better because there's plenty of opportunity for those who are willing to work. Now on to scenario number 2. This world resembles a place like New York or California, where left-wing policies are rampant, all of them enacted with the best of intentions. Same woman, same small town. She wants to start her own business, so she decides to see what it would cost her. In this world, salons need to be at least 1,000 square feet. She would need to rent a location. She would also be required to buy a specific chair, among the models listed in the text of the regulations. The same regulations demand that she hangs a mirror that is at least 4 by 4 feet. They also stipulate that she needs at least 5 faucets, and at least 3 of them need to have hot water. The location would also need a ramp to make it accessible to handicapped people, and of course at least 2 bathrooms. Needless to say, they need to be handicap accessible too. The location also needs to have at least 2 entrances and exits, 1 emergency exit, AC, a certain number of outlets in strategic locations, and more. She realizes there's no way she would feel safe trusting only her own judgment when it comes to making sure all the regulatory stipulations have been followed, so she needs to hire a lawyer to navigate the regulations for her. She also needs to get the tools and hair products, but since they have their own regulations to obey, they are all a lot more expensive than the ones our friend from world number 1 bought. After all that is done, including the absolutely necessary renovation of the location she would choose, it would cost her about $150,000. And then she would need to pay for an inspection, and wait around for weeks until the inspection came to her place of business. There's also not a small chance the inspector would demand a bribe, knowing he holds the fate of her small business in his hands. Including the opportunity cost, the bribe, the renovation, the products, the lawyer, having to support herself while the business is shut down waiting for the inspection, she calculates she would need a $200,000 loan to open the same business. She worked a menial job and didn't have many assets, so she doesn't have anywhere near that amount in her savings. And no bank in the world will loan her that sum since she can't provide enough collateral. Even if she couldn't imagine hiring anyone for the foreseeable future, with the costly minimum wage and the benefits she would be forced to provide for them. At that moment, she realizes her dream of becoming a business owner is, for all intents and purposes, dead. The only two salons in her small town will continue to be large chains, given that not many people can afford to risk $200,000 or more on a new business, and most couldn't get that amount even if they were willing to take the risk. Since the two salons don't have to compete for employees, their hairdressers make the minimum wage. They don't have enough disposable income to heat up the economy. In fact, they don't have any disposable income at all. The entire economy of the small town is in shatters. The local government ran her small town into the ground. Just like most other left-wing policies, regulations look good at first glance, but if you dig deep, you realize they're terrible. They're the product of an ideology, not a logical analysis or a practical view of the world. They're an attempt to make the world perfect, which it will never be. Instead of solving problems, they create new ones, much worse than the ones they were meant to combat. If you think a grocery store is dirty, go to a different one. If you think a car isn't very safe, don't buy it. As most other simple solutions to complex problems, regulations not only don't work, but they make things worse. The fact of the matter is, regulations are terrible for the economy. If you liked the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. I'll be posting new videos every week. And we all know how YouTube isn't exactly very fond of promoting right-wing points of view. So if you can take the time to share the content with someone else who you feel would appreciate my point of view, that would be a great help. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope to see you around next time.